Welcome to Kitchen 101, where we learn how to think like a chef. Not simply following a recipe that somebody else has created, but actually giving you the knowledge to make your own recipes and to modify other people's recipes to fit your way of eating and your lifestyle. Ever wonder why it's so hard to reduce the amount of sugar in things and have the recipe come out the same? I don't mean just in sweetness, but in texture and density. Well, grab your pen, paper, and a stalk of sugar cane, because I'm Professor Kitchen, and class is in session. Sugar. Sugar is ubiquitous in our modern diet. It can be found not only in sweet things that you would expect, like cakes and cookies and pies, but also in things that where you wouldn't think it'd be in there, like bacon and French onion dip. With epidemic levels of obesity and diabetes running rampant through most modern first world countries, many people are looking for ways they can reduce the amount of sugar they're shoving in their face on a daily basis. Sugar substitutes are very popular with many people. In fact, there are lots of sugar substitutes on the market today. But if you've ever tried to replace sugar with a sugar substitute in some of your recipes, you may have run into some problems. Some flat pastries, visually unpleasant meats, burned delicacies, and frozen goods that just don't feel right on the tongue. So what's the deal? How does simply replacing a sweetener cause such a catastrophic failure in your recipes? The problem is that sugar doesn't just sweeten. It just sweetens your coffee or tea, but nearly everything else that is used in it does so much more. Cooks have been exploiting the amazing properties of sugar for thousands of years. In fact, much of our cultural cuisine has a lot going on with it besides sweetness because of sugar. When replacing sugar in a recipe, you, my thoughtfully chefy friend, are going to need to know what sugar adds to your dish in order to make proper adjustments. So here's a list of the amazing things sugar is doing to your food. Sugar has mass, and therefore takes up space. If you're trying to replace 1 cup of sugar with a 1/4 cup of another sweetener, you're not adding as much mass to the recipe. This becomes important if you're dealing with something like, say, a cake that's a chemical reaction that partially requires a certain amount of mass to operate properly. Sugar is hygroscopic, which is just a big $4 word that means that sugar really likes water. So when you take sugar and you put it with flour, it tends to absorb the water faster than the flour can, which means the flour doesn't make as much gluten, which means, say, your cake or your cookies end up coming out softer and more tender than they do chewy. Because sugar is hygroscopic, things baked with it tend to stay moist and tender longer than things without it. This means that your breads and your muffins will still be good the next day and not have turned into hardtack, which, unless you're a pirate, that's a good thing. This moisture hogging ability of sugar increases the shelf life of baked goods. That's the reason most pre-packaged confectionaries are loaded with the stuff. Well, that and we human beings really like sweet things. Coming back to the hygroscopic nature of sugar, you can use it to cure meats, because sugar will draw the water out of the meat and make it where bacteria can't survive. So if you take yourself a nice pork belly, smear it with sugar, put it in a cool, dry place for a little bit, and you can have yourself some nice sweet bacon. In fact, chances are, if you look in your refrigerator, the label on your favorite brand of bacon probably says sugar cured. Leaving sugar's fish-like attraction to water, let's move on to yeast's people-like attraction to sugar. Just like us, yeast prefer to munch down on sugar before anything else. That's the reason most homemade bread recipes call for at least a tablespoon or so of the sweet stuff. It helps get those bacteria all excited and doing their gastronomical aeration. That's right, your bread's light and fluffy nature comes from yeast farts. The melting point of sugar is somewhere between 284 degrees Fahrenheit and 370 degrees Fahrenheit. This is much lower than most foods we tend to mix it with. That means the sugar will go from a solid to a liquid fairly quickly under heat. So when you put that ball of cookie dough into the oven, the sugar turns into a liquid, which turns your dough into a thick batter. which then obeys the law of gravity and spreads out. One of the tastiest properties of sugar is that when heated high enough, it turns into caramel. Not just that ooey gooey stuff you get at the store, but that wonderfully sweet, crunchy topping that's on a creme brulee. Many a bread, meat, and vegetable have been flavor enhanced with a light coating of sugar heated to nearly the burn state. Mmm, tasty. There's a cooking method called the creaming method that utilizes the crystalline nature of sugar to create air bubbles in a batter. When heated, these air bubbles do their natural thing and expand, which creates a lighter, fluffier pastry. While this isn't as effective as yeast, at least it doesn't contain bacteria fart. The crystalline nature of table sugar adds strength to soft baked goods, such as a meringue. Much like pebbles add strength to asphalt and concrete, the sugar crystals in your divinity can help it hold its shape, even though it's so brittle it crumbles in your hand and becomes divinity powder, which isn't nearly as tasty as you think it might be. Because sugar is denser than water, it will change both the melting and the freezing points of water. What this means is, when you put sugar in, say, ice cream, it helps the water in the cream not to freeze as fast. It will go deeper into the mix before ice crystals start to form. This helps make a smoother ice cream. In the same way, sugar helps increase the amount of heat required to boil away water. This will make your food get warmer before it starts losing moisture. Leaving sugar out of frozen goods takes away some of that smooth texture that we love. Leaving it out of baked goods means we lose some of that moist chewiness we're used to. As you can see, sugar does a whole lot more than just sweeten. So if you're leaving sugar out of a dish, you really need to consider what attributes you're changing and try to think of ways to add those attributes back in. Did I miss anything that sugar can add to a recipe? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss a single class. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great week. God bless. Class dismissed. Not simply following a recipe. I have to get my head down. Try that again. But actually giving you. Let's try that again. Leaving sugar's fish-like attraction to lot. Leaving fishes. Leaving sugar's fish-like attraction to water. Let's move on to yeast's people-like attraction to fish. To fish? Try that again.